This is the Bates Bobcast, our weekly podcast where we take a look at the week that was in Bates athletics. My name is Aaron Morse, and this week we continue our Why I Coach series with our skiing coaches. Interim alpine skiing head coach Kurt Simard and longtime Bates Nordic skiing head coach Becky Woods from the class of 1989 join the show. That's coming up on the Bates Bobcast. A two-time EISA Coach of the Year with the University of New Hampshire, Kurt Simard is the interim head alpine skiing coach at Bates. He graduated from UNH in 1991 with a business degree, but soon decided he wanted to get into coaching. Well, happy to have the interim head coach of the Bates Alpine Skiing Program with us here on the Bobcast. His first time on the Bobcast, Kurt Simard. Welcome. Coach Simard, I'm curious, just tell me a little bit about how you got connected with Bates. I know you have a lot of local connections, but how did you end up connected to the college when they needed an interim head coach here?
Well, thank you, Aaron, for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm really excited. It feels like it's been a little longer than it has been actually in some ways. I don't know. It's just interesting times, but previous to this, I was in athletic administration. So it's been, even though it's not a completely normal situation right now, it has been refreshing to be wearing, a coach's hat and really staying within that realm, with under the barriers, being able to just get to know the student athletes, get to know what they're about, what they're thinking, how I can, support them during this time period. It's been really good. And, for the student athletes, I knew this going in just because I had worked with kids that have gone to Bates. I've, hired some Bates graduates as coaches in programs that I've led. So I've had a connection to Bates for a number of years. It's been amazing how much pride they have in their school and in their sports. And the student athletes have been so great welcoming me there, which I was a little bit nervous just because of the situation, not being able to be like, okay, this is the way we're going to do. I've done this before. Well, no, I haven't done this before. I've never entered into a job during a pandemic like this. And so, but so it's been really good.
You mentioned the connection with Bates, Gould Academy, where you were. Tell me a little about the relationship between Gould Academy and Bates. I feel like there's a pretty good one.
Yeah, both schools share Sunday River as their primary training facility, and the resort has an incredible training facility. So Bates College is very fortunate to have such a great facility nearby. And it's funny in talking to the kids when the student athletes currently asking them what was your path to Bates, and learning a bit about them, and they did bring up Sunday River as being an attractive piece. So you tend to see with that training being the same place, whether it's a Bates grad that becomes a Gould coach or a Gould student that goes to Bates, you see them around, and I think it's a good relationship there, and I know that a few of our athletes right now at Bates who because we can't be functioning as a team, I know that they are finding some opportunities as independents to go to different ski areas and stuff to keep up with some training, and Sunday River is one of them.
Well, you went to the University of New Hampshire for undergrad. Tell me a little bit about your background in terms of, I assume most skiers I talked to, they grew up skiing like from a very young age. Was that true for you?
Yeah, totally. Just really learned to do it really before I even knew about it. I was young, so don't really remember the process. But certainly, grew up in the sport, and it's a unique sport. It's lots of interesting travel and snowstorms and different things, and so many different things happen. You spend a whole day. Like I remember I went to a 4-day race series in New York. My dad brought me over, and I never finished one of the races, so, so probably over the course of the 4 days, I probably competed, I don't know, for a total of 2 minutes, maybe, so a lot goes into, something that doesn't take, it's a short amount of time, and it's pressure, and there's a lot of, you fail more than you succeed. So it's an interesting sport that way. But yeah, grew up with it and ended up going to the University of New Hampshire and competed there. It was a great experience. And really when I was done, at the University of New Hampshire, I was like, I love this. I've put a lot of it into it, but, I want to do something different. I want to, I thought I was going to use my business degree and head down that way. And I started, but, then I got into coaching part-time, and yeah, that was it. I just got hooked on it. So it's been a way of life.
Well, I was going to say, just a few years, I think, after you graduated, you became the head coach there, right? So tell me a little bit about that process of returning to your alma mater a few years later to run the program.
That opportunity came up. It was something I didn't really have to think about very long at that point. It actually had come up a couple of years before, and I wasn't ready to really go through that process at the time. And so when it did, I knew it was time, and it was a tremendous experience. When I talked to the folks at Bates about coming to Bates, now I just expressed that that was the hardest decision I probably had to make in terms of my career, was to leave collegiate coaching at the time. I really found the age, it's an age where, certainly young adults and conversations about life and different stuff. So it was really a great experience. And I don't know, I think that when you work with individual sports, a team sport, but that individual component, every student athlete, they tick something different, something makes them tick in a different way. And as a coach, you're trying to solve that little mystery, how you can best support them and how you can best take them somewhere where they can't get themselves.
Who are some of your mentors in coaching? Who's helped you along the way, kind of?
Yeah. It's funny. I always, when I think about some folks, I have three that really stand out. And the interesting thing about it is that one was when I was younger. This person didn't even ski. They'd set the course in their boots, walk up and do it. Probably not really technically skilled as a coach, but just someone that had so much spirit that made me want to do it. The look on their face when they would tell you something, and it usually wasn't anything very complicated, like, think you can go back up and go faster, yeah. So, something like that. And then I had the opportunity when I was in high school to have probably the most, expertise wise, an Austrian coach that was, really amazing, really, really tough, really like, to the point sometimes where it was almost too tough. But so that was a little bit different. And then my college coach, he, I think he demanded a lot, but we had, he made it fun, too. So I think when I put it all together as a coach, I feel like I've started off coaching and it hasn't really changed. I just like have fun, work hard, no regrets. Those three things are the things that I always try to keep to the forefront.
What are some of your proudest moments as a coach? I mean, you were at UNH for quite some time in terms of what you achieved there.
Yeah. I think 2006, University of Colorado was the host in Steamboat, and day one, the University of New Hampshire alpine team won. So we were in first place that year. In skiing, you got the Nordic and the alpine, and you try to get those two teams to be in sync. And I'm not so sure, when our alpine team was a bit weak, the Nordic team was strong at UNH, so we were flipped. So that year, I don't want to be dissing the Nordic team, but we weren't in first place after their day. The next day we fell off the thing, but yeah, I mean, to come off the hill that day, I can remember calling a friend who was a great, just cared about the team, was on the team, and making that phone call and left a message. And I think he had it on his voicemail for a good number of years after, just that what we, where we were standing. So, see the University of New Hampshire in first place in skiing in the USA today that was my highlight. So
excellent. The carnival circuit in collegiate skiing, I imagine most everyone kind of knows each other, right? I mean, there's not that many programs that are competing on the carnival circuit. So what's that dynamic like? I mean, I'm sure you remember competing against Bates and whatnot back in the day, right?
Yeah, it's true. You have teammates that you're really close to and they're friends. But boy, every team, that you're competing against, there's somebody that growing up prior to being on that team that you had a friendship with or a rivalry. And the camaraderie, it's really fun. It's really exciting to see the people as you grow up and as you grow up through your college years and competing. And it's really a tremendous thing. And it's something that I think, I think a lot of student athletes, particularly the ones that are in, skiing for Bates and other Division I schools in skiing, they have put a lot into it, and a lot of them have gone to some schools that they've really worked hard, but it was really in an individual way. And I think when you get to the collegiate piece, I think the student athletes, they embrace that piece of it so much, and I think it's real.
And then now you touched on this earlier, but taking over in the middle of a pandemic, how have you gone about trying to, meet and talk with members of the current program?
Yeah, I was able to meet most of them on campus, late fall, before the break, and, the Zoom thing, which, I think it's effective, for some of the more, broadband communication, but I've definitely felt myself really trying to stay in touch one-on-one a lot more than I probably otherwise would have, just communicating, how you doing, what are you doing? When I came on board, I think a lot of them were just trying to figure out how to handle, this time period now, which at the time, wasn't quite as long as it is now. But, so I think for them to be able to communicate with me and bounce, their thoughts and ideas, and also, for me to maybe help them, just take a deep breath. Everybody's in the same boat here to a degree, and look at it as an opportunity where, you get to spend a Thanksgiving with your family. I know I talked to one of the seniors, she hadn't had Thanksgiving with her family in 8 years, so that was a silver lining for her. So it's interesting to think that, I have established some kind of relationship with the team members and the team under these circumstances, and certainly look forward to the future with having it be in a different situation.
Yeah. I mean, and you touched on this, they are able to, train individually, right? I mean, skiing, it's fairly socially distant, I suppose, at times,
Yep.
on the hill and everything. So have you been giving them tips on anything? Have they been asking you questions or anything like that? Or is that hard to do if you're not there yourself?
Well, usually just in some kind of conversation, usually, I mean, I'm the type of coach too, if I, what are you up to? I'll ask people what their work. I want them to sort of engage in the process of them, articulating what they're doing. So sometimes just allowing them to share what it is and give them the, agreement, or maybe just a word of wisdom about it that just helps them. But yeah, they're just because they are able to get out, it's all over the country, right? They could be in Utah, they could be in Oregon, they could be in Colorado, they could be New Hampshire, Maine, but, able to get out and train, and, without the travel and the lodging piece and all those different things that make it, extremely complicated. They're able to get out and do training sessions, and, seems like, from what I've seen, people are using the parking lot and going straight to the hill and, bypassing lodges and all that. So,
right. What's your favorite part of coaching? What you mentioned, you had a business degree before you moved into coaching, but what made you say, hey, I want to stick with this? Yeah.
I mean, I think part of it is trying to solve that little mystery about how to help somebody who's working on something, take it a little further, from an individual standpoint. I do love teams and organizations and collaborative effort, and with skiing, I think it's really, it's an individual sport at times when you're competing, but the things that you need to do to be a good teammate, to be a supportive person, to really try to teach young student athletes how to function together and in their role in creating an environment that leads to everybody doing their best, and it's so I like that aspect of it. I mean, I think it's something as a coach, whether as a coach or a manager in an organization, you sort of have a feel for, okay, it's pretty good right now, or we're a little stressed in this area, and how are we gonna reel it in, so to speak, or how are we gonna navigate it? I think just those pieces, whether they're individual, like technical skiing piece, or more of a mental piece, it's just, I find it not hard to be thinking about it almost all day when you're doing it. It's it's hard to shut off.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you've coached at the collegiate level, you've coached at Gould Academy. Similarities, differences between kind of those types of students you're working with?
Well, one is, I think the team feeling of it is much more so at a collegiate level than at a private school. It's more individual there, and it's more they're a lot of cases their goal is to try to become good enough to go ski at a college and be on a team. So the team piece is probably the biggest, and I think the age and maturity is a different piece, just in terms of the college kids have a little bit more. They're able to engage in the process a little bit more, or tend to be willing to. That can be a little harder with the younger ages. They might be more in a mindset of just the coaching comes to them. It comes to them rather than them really owning it and getting more engaged in it.
Not only is it a team sport within alpine, but alpine and Nordic combine for the points, and yet it's completely different sports. I mean, there's almost no similarities. What's that dynamic like? I mean, from your perspective, I always find that very interesting.
Yeah. Some schools, I don't really know Bates, but some schools will do like an inner team thing where they'll flip, the alpine people will do Nordic and Nordic just as an in-house little fun end of the year thing. And it's also, you also gain a lot of respect for the other, for what they're doing on the other piece. So it is a unique thing, but the spirit at an NCAA championship, because it's a 4-day event and it goes back and forth, alpine Nordic, and the spirit out there, those are some fond memories going out there and watching, our Nordic team compete for our school and vice versa. So it's definitely one's, downhill and a lot more gravity, a lot of more things going on. Another one's a little more flat, but it's still moving around on the skis on the snow.
Have you got a chance to chat with our Nordic coach, Becky Woods, our longest tenured coach, class of 89 here?
I have. Yes. Yep. And I actually have had, the opportunity to know Becky over the years, and, certainly have a lot of respect for her coaching and what she's done and continues to do with the program at Bates.
Great. Well, any other thoughts you wanted to share about your passion for coaching and anything that we haven't gotten to discuss yet, perhaps?
Well, I just, it's exciting to be at Bates, and it's been a great, even in this way, it's been a great community to enter into. People have been extremely welcoming, and I'm excited. And coaching is something it's a really special thing. I think it's a incredible occupation, and I'm excited to be doing it.
Becky Woods is the longest tenured current head coach at Bates. She took over the Nordic skiing program in 1994 and has coached 4 All-Americans and 2 Olympians. Woods is the daughter of the late Bob Flynn, a beloved Bates coach in multiple sports for 50 years.
I think I didn't understand the impact of that until maybe I started coaching myself, because then I realized all of the things that I had grown up with and seen were part of what he did as a coach here at Bates. So I remember, players coming over to the house, thinking it was really fun to meet them, but also feeling like in some ways they were role models for me as a young athlete growing up, and particularly the women on the ski team, and I had the opportunity at different times to interact with them, and it was amazing, and I thought that, they were Olympians as far as I was concerned. So, and then I also saw the behind the scenes, which was any daughter or son who has a dad, or, maybe a mom now too, who coaches football, or baseball. You see lineups and you see X's and O's, and those papers were everywhere in our house, and so I knew that work and home life all sort of blended sometimes, and we respected that, and in some ways it just, I think it showed how passionate he really was about what he did. And so that helped me a lot as I formed my own coaching philosophies, once I made that decision to coach.
And then when you were going, looking at colleges, was Bates a no-brainer for you, or how did that process go?
Bates was not a no-brainer. I think I initially felt like, I have to be away. I grew up here. Luckily, I was fortunate enough to go to Green Mountain Valley School. So I had the opportunity to be away from the Auburn-Lewiston sort of skiing scene for a little bit, and had some opportunities over in Vermont and around the country with that. So that was really helpful for me. And I think that allowed me eventually to sort of make that decision that, yes, Bates is going to work for me. And once I did, I was really excited about it.
And then at Bates, was there a point in time when you were in school that you thought, hey, when I graduate, I'd like to get into coaching, or when did that happen for you?
It definitely did not happen when I was in school. I did, again, I grew up with it, right? So of course I was thinking I'm doing my own thing, and, I'm not following in anyone's footsteps. I think it happened after I graduated. Once I graduated, I was still living in the East, and I actually helped the team my first year out on the weekends, right? So I would meet them at the carnivals, wherever they were going, as just sort of that second or third assistant. And it really sparked something in me then, but, I was still trying to figure out what I was going to do. So it started then. I went away for a couple of years, and then I sort of stayed in coaching, which surprised me. So I coached a club out in Colorado, and then I had to start thinking, oh, why am I still doing this? And I really loved it. So I had the opportunity. Suzanne Coffey called me, 2 or 3 years out, and said, would you be willing to come back? And it was a huge decision for me at that point, but one that, certainly changed the course of my life and brought me right to where I am right now. So
I know Coach Flynn was involved in the skiing program heavily. When you were in college, who was kind of the main coach for the program at that point?
Yeah, so he was the director of skiing.
Right.
So he oversaw both programs, and Buzz Davis was my Nordic coach. He was fantastic.
Tell me a little bit about Buzz Davis for those who don't know about Buzz.
Oh, Buzz was great. He actually ran a Nordic center over in Auburn. It's no longer going. It was called Snorada. And he had great experience as a racer and as a coach. And he was close, right? So we would all just drive over to the Nordic Center every day for training. And he had his cool little wax room downstairs. And so he was fantastic all the time, great influence on us, and really kept the team together, and really pushed the level of training and racing for us.
What was your reaction when you got that call from Suzanne Coffey about the Bates job?
I think I thought, really? Because I was young, I was really young. And so I was really excited that someone thought that I could actually do this job. So thank you, Suzanne, for that. I was like, okay, I think I could do this. And she thinks I could do this. So let's go, and that was that. And I haven't really looked back since then.
And how have you seen things change sort of at Bates? You started at 94 as the head coach of the Nordic program. How has the program kind of developed or changed through the years in your eyes?
I think when I came back, I was young enough to think that I could change a lot of things, right? And really had a few things in mind that were really, really important to me. One, as an athlete, so I could still pull up my athlete brain when I was, in those first few years of coaching, but also as, a program and looking ahead, what do we really want to do, and how can I impact what I already thought was great, and for me, the important piece at that point was, putting Bates on an even playing field with the rest of EISA. That was really critical to me. And it had to do with the level of competition as a team, not just as individuals, and also just our presence. And so that was a focus for me for sure in the first, 5, maybe even 10 years, to try to just I knew that our ski program and our budgets were, less than some of the other programs that we're racing against. And I wanted to take that factor out, and so when we showed up at a carnival, our athletes felt like they had as much of an opportunity to win a race as anybody else did that was there. So that took a lot of, sort of finagling, and I feel like we really got there, and we had some great talent and some great success early on, and I think that really helped shape the direction of the program.
One of the interesting things about skiing, at least from my point of view, is that I think it's the only sport here at Bates where the women's and the men's scores are combined, right? So it's really truly a co-ed team. What's that like, leading both the women and the men, and how do you go about doing that?
Oh, it's awesome. And I get this question a lot, and, do you, it's just one team as far as I'm concerned, and, I think that once you understand that, and as a coach, once you're working in that atmosphere, then you start to dial in individual athletes and working with them individually, and how we, really foster, good teamwork, good competition, and individual success, and make sure that everybody feels like they're a part of that, no matter where they fall in, men, women, how they, what their result might be, what their impact is on the team day to day, at the races, on campus, is really critical. And so we work on that a lot, I think. And I really treat the team as one. And I think they also, I've heard the team in different instances, they hold themselves accountable, so if somebody says something that shouldn't be said, it. And, the men call the women out, the women call the men out, and I think it's a great balance.
And one of those things you mentioned about teamwork, I know skiing at the high school level can sometimes be very individual focused. I mean, they're trying to get to college, they're trying to get those opportunities. How do you acclimate first years, I guess, to, hey, this is a truly a team environment?
I think a lot of that comes from discussion, but it also comes from the leaders ahead of them, right? So the captains on the team. And, I think some of the best days of racing that sort of stand out in my mind are those days where, maybe we had a good day overall as a team, but that's what our athletes are looking for. They're not going to the results and saying, I was 20th. They're going to the results and saying, we had 5 in the top 25, and that's what matters to them. And, to me, those are the days that I just quietly am really excited, that they get it, they get how important it is to have a teammate alongside them. And they're excited for their success as much as their own.
I was thinking about when you first came to Bates as the head coach of the Nordic program, I was thinking about, like, It'd be interesting for me to have like my dad as my colleague. What was it like for you to make that adjustment?
Yeah, Aaron, from the time you called me on this one, I've been thinking about that. And I couldn't have asked for a better colleague. I mean, there were a few times where I was like, Dad, really? You don't have to say that, or, but he was my biggest supporter, and, he was that person that, I could turn to if I needed to, like, oh, what should I do in this situation? Or have you ever had this happen before? And what he did as a colleague was he gave me the freedom to choose. And maybe make mistakes, but I don't think he let me make too many, I mean, he was sort of able to say, rein it in, or whatever he had to say, but I really trusted him. And so it was, to me, it was a gift. It was awesome working with him. And I got to see, how he interacted with everybody else as well, and the respect that all the coaches had for one another. And that was really an important lesson. And I'll take that every day,
Throughout your career at Bates, what are maybe some of your proudest moments as the head coach? What are some moments that really stand out to you?
I think what I was saying earlier, some of those days when we have had, the team finish, maybe a challenging race, and they are more concerned with how they did, as a group, as, in terms of how they did individually. But then at the same time, to have had some athletes, really rise to the top, be all East and, go to NCAAs and be all American. Those moments you never forget those moments, right? Because it's the culmination of so much work, so much passion, so much, dedication from the athletes and the team, really, because, when one of our athletes is successful, it's because they have had the support of their teammates and the coaches and, in the athletic department. And so you never really forget those moments, no question about it. And then I think too, that just when I think about the moments that stand out, it's not always skiing, it's watching somebody bind their thesis, and knowing what went into that and how they managed to still come to practice and then and have this huge accomplishment, and it was such a priority for them, but they were able to manage both, and then watching a teammate help another one, when their teammate doesn't have a good day, those are moments that there's so many moments that stand out, that it's hard to just pull up a few. For sure the successes, but also sometimes, those days that are challenging, and you see the athletes on your team and maybe the captains bring everybody back up, and to me, those are equally as important.
Fairly early on in your career, you got to coach one of the great Nordic skiers, one of the great athletes ever at Bates, Justin Freeman, who eventually became an Olympian, of course. What was that like? I mean, early on in your career, when he shows up is to campus, can you tell right away this guy's going to be like one of the best ever? Or did he develop more slowly, or how did that kind of go?
Justin came in, and no, right away, you were not, he was an amazing runner and skier, right? And his running was a little bit above his skiing in his first year, right? So we knew that he had an engine, and he was a really good skier, right? But his skiing was a little bit slower than his running. So his first year, he didn't qualify for NCAAs. And but he had a great team alongside him, right? So I'll never forget the day that and Justin was quiet initially, he was just, okay, I'm just going to put the work in and do this. And he had a couple of teammates that were a little bit more, that had maybe a little bit more experience. And I'll never forget the day that Dave Chamberlain and Justin, right, they were on the team together, had great successes, but they were doing some interval workout, right? And Justin was just kind of doing his own thing. And Dave kind of looked at him and said, "Hey, get up here and race me." Right. And honestly, that was the start of the whole, just the two of them really saying, you know what, we can do this. And so from that point on, Justin just, and I'm not sure that was the moment for him, but I just remember that moment for me, sort of knowing that, these guys are going to be good. They love to compete, and that's the most important thing for them. So they're going to do everything they can to be successful, and they're going to do it together. So that was fun. And Justin was always that guy that, he was studying, although and he was training. And, and you knew that he would get both of those things done all the time. Never a question ever. And, he was also that guy that probably put in a little bit more time. He went for those morning runs and those morning roller skis. And he evolved not just as a skier, but, as a member of the team. And that, to me, by the end of his career at Bates, one, I knew he was going to be super successful, but two, he was so well respected, and he was just a huge part of the program, and had sort of, really come out in that way, to really have the confidence to lead the team, not just in racing. And that was a huge success too.
In general, it's got to be one of the coolest experiences for you to track what your skiers do after they graduate from Bates, right? Whether it's be an Olympian or be on the World Cup stage in biathlon or whatnot. What's it like for you to kind of track them as after they graduate?
Oh my gosh, it's amazing, right? It's amazing to see, not just as skiers, but it's really fun to see, we do have that sort of unique opportunity in our sport for people to continue on in skiing for a while if they choose to. So yeah, that's awesome to watch, right? To have, because we're still racing, we just keep going every year, but then to have a alum out there, doing something huge, winning US nationals, going to the Olympics, out on the, OPA Cup in Europe, or, over, skiing biathlon. Hallie Grossman she's in Europe right now, and our team is following her, like, how are you doing? What are you up to? It's humbling, really, in so many ways to see that happen, to know, that maybe, we helped build a little bit of a foundation for them to continue on and pursue something that they're really passionate about. So.
Who are some of your mentors in coaching? Who have you gone to throughout your career? I mean, obviously, Coach Flynn, but who else perhaps have you gone to throughout your career for advice?
Yeah, there's no question my dad was sort of the leader in that, right? He, because he was really right there, throughout my career, in the same space, in the same office, right? That was a little bit, that was tight sometimes, but it worked. But when I was first coming into coaching in the collegiate level, I think that there were a couple of coaches that were just really, really kind and welcoming to me. I think my age, I was one of the only women at that point coaching men and women, and certainly the only, one of the only head coaches, and so that, I looked to the coaches that I had known even as an athlete, and Terry Aldrich took me under his wing. He was the Middlebury coach, and always checked in with me, got me involved at the NCAA level with the NCAA committee. And he was always somebody that I could look to. And Bud Fisher did the same thing at Williams, just, kind of checking in. I could call them if we had issues or I just didn't know what to do. But they were also inspiring. They had great teams, and I felt that they really recognized and celebrated the whole skier, that, it was certainly about, being successful as an athlete, but also as a person. And that was important to me. And then, Cammie Thompson over at Dartmouth, she's been coaching as long as I have. And there isn't anything that we haven't discussed about training, about athletes, and about life. How do you balance this? We're on the road all winter long, we have kids and our own kids, and how do you make it all work? And she's been a great influence on me throughout the years, so and then, the other piece, when you think about mentors, and when I think about mentors, we have some, I have some colleagues, friends, coaches right here in our department that, they've been through it all, right, with all of us. And, I would never want to say that it's only those people from outside, I think I look as much to some of my colleagues here at Bates as I do to some of my colleagues in the ski world, to help sort through it all and to stay inspired and motivated, and hope that I can sort of return the favor sometimes too.
Yeah, I think I was talking with Vanessa Williamson, Bates alum, associate head coach for the swimming team. She mentioned that you and Paul Gasingay were kind of maybe unwittingly mentors to her, and it kind of showing what it takes to succeed kind of as an alum and a coach at Bates. What's that like for you to know you've had an influence on, up and coming coaches, no matter the sport?
That I don't even know what to say to that. I'm, thrilled that she feels that, we've had that ability to influence her. In some ways, as an alum, it's almost paying it forward, and, we, I know Paul feels the same way, but we had amazing opportunities at Bates as athletes, and then having the good fortune to be able to choose to come back, to be offered, the opportunity to come back. And so to just pay it forward from that place that, that we came in as, like alums. We have a different point of view, I think, sometimes, because we're taking over a program that we actually really were a part of already. And you have to figure out what stays and what goes, and how to be respectful with all of that. And, so I think that, fingers crossed we can keep doing that.
It is kind of interesting. You and Paul, graduated the same year, started 1 year apart as coaches, and you both had the same story of Suzanne Coffey just calling you up and saying, hey, the job's open, you should apply.
Yes, we both did. And I think we both had that moment of like, do I go back, because I think do I go back home? I'm supposed to be making it big somewhere else, and then we're coming home. And as I think through that, those moments, right? Those were the big moments of reckoning, like, okay, I am. And I'm coming home and making it my own now, and, that was also really important. I think Paul felt the same way. And then you realize how, I do now, how grateful I really was to have my family around me and supporting me throughout my career. Especially when I had young kids, my mom traveled with us sometimes because that was the only way that I could make it happen, and I think for her that was really special. And for me, it was, I don't know how I would have done it without her, so thank you, Suzanne, for trusting us, right? And And maybe it meant that, I think about Paul and what an influence he had as an athlete at Bates. He was a standout, and so for her to reach out and say, we want this, we want this here, we want you to continue, it was incredibly kind.
How have you seen yourself grow as a coach through the years? How have you seen yourself change?
Whew. If we don't continue to grow, we're in trouble, right? So, I think that every athlete that you have that comes into your program, every family, every parent, grandparent that comes across, sort of the Bates skiing family brings something new and brings something that changes the program, right? And so I think I learned with a few athletes and with a few families how important being a part of this program really was, right? So, there's no question that every athlete that I've coached has come to Bates to go to college, right? Academically, this is where I want to be. But I know that skiing was equally as important. And, there were a few moments in my career where I've had parents or grandparents say, how do I know my grandson or my daughter is going to be okay? Who's going to take care of them? And I realized very quickly that was me, and I think once I realized that, it changed the way that I approached things. It just became bigger, and I understood that I was responsible not only for athletic, growth, but also just, hoping that I might be able to have an influence on personal growth, in those 4 years that our athletes are here. And that has really helped me, when I really want, to have this success athletically. And maybe it didn't happen, but I have the ability to look at the bigger picture now and say, we were successful as a team and we did this, and I watched you go from, being a first year who was quiet and didn't speak up to someone who is now leading the team and you're the captain, and so those things have really, helped me mellow my competitive, sort of piece, knowing that it's bigger than that.
And then to have your daughter on the team in recent years, I mean, we've talked about this experience before, but I mean, from a coaching perspective, did you coach her growing up at all, or was this kind of the first time where you were actually coaching her?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. Again, one of those mentors, Bud Fisher, I went up to him one day when Kaylin made the decision to come to Bates. I said, how do I do this, Bud? He said, you let her, be independent, and you have other people helping you, so there's no question that James Upham, who works with me, was a huge influence on Kaylin. But to me, that was, and I was incredibly grateful for that. Every now and again, I'd be like, yep, she's yours, but with, great respect, when I did that. And Kaylin was so easy, to work with. And I think maybe she had also grown up with it, right? So she kind of knew that, this is what I'm getting into, and okay, I'm good with it. And to me, it was important for her to have her own experience. It wasn't my experience, it was hers. And I hope that she saw that, or maybe in a couple of years she sees that after, she looks back on things. Oh yeah, I was able to do these things. It wasn't just about the Flynn legacy, that that we have going. So, and to watch her succeed, she was a captain. I don't know. It's just, and see all the other things that went into it, because I got the inside scoop, right? So I learned a lot as a coach watching my daughter go through the program, because I got to see some of the nitty gritty that even some of my, closest athletes don't share. So that was helpful.
Well, any other thoughts you wanted to share about coaching we haven't gotten to talk about?
I think that for me and certainly athletes that have come through my program, we have a lot of people in skiing still. And I think that, it's one of the opportunities to be in a profession that, you are passionate about, and that, I hope in some way that anybody who goes into it understands the influence that they might have on people, and really owns that and takes responsibility of that. It's so rewarding in so many different ways to be allowed to be a part of 4 years of these athletes' lives. And so it's really been and will continue to be a privilege for me to be a part of it. So thanks, Bobcats.
Next time on the Bates Bobcast, we'll continue our Why I Coach series with our lacrosse coaches, women's head coach Brett Allen and men's head coach Peter Lasagna. That's next time on the Bates Bobcast.